My name is Jenna Wallace. I am the district attorney here in Lincoln County, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming out today and being willing to sit through not only a presentation, but then also engage in any questions and answers that you guys might have right now. I've been your district attorney since June of 2024. I started my official elected term last January of 25, so I'm in technically my second year of my term. And one of the things that I will say is that I never thought I would be an elected district attorney. I will be very honest with you. I've been a prosecutor for about 10 years now. I started in Coos County. I spent a little bit of time in Lane County, and then I came here in Lincoln in 2022. And I truly love prosecution. I love reading police reports. I love making charging decisions. I love trial. Those are really my passions in life. Never thought I would be a politician, never thought I would be in an elected position, and it just kind of, the doors opened and here I am. And I'm actually really enjoyed talking about it with people, talking about prosecution and what we do in the district attorney's office. I think that unless you've had contacts with the criminal justice system, you might not know everything that the district attorney's office does. And I think transparency is one of the most important things that we can do nowadays, is give you information and then obviously give you the opportunity to ask me questions about what's going on with criminal prosecution here in Lincoln County. I have a short presentation just kind of talking about the criminal justice system with some statistics regarding criminal filings here in Lincoln County. As well as kind of an update as far as the staffing issues in my office. And so I think we'll just jump into it. And then at the end, we'll do a question and answer time. Commissioner Casey Miller is here. I think he's going to participate in that as well. I did invite Commissioner Chuck as well, but he never responded to any of my emails, unfortunately. So as far as our criminal justice system, where everything really starts is when the crime occurs, right? When we're talking about crime here in Lincoln County. When that happens, law enforcement is typically the first to respond. You know that if you call 911 or non-emergency dispatch, that's who's responding to a crime. And they're there, they're interviewing, they're investigating, and then if they find that there's sufficient evidence, they're then making an arrest. At that point, this is just a brief kind of overview. As far as Lincoln County, we have about 90 total patrol law enforcement officers. That includes detectives as well that are responding to crime here in Lincoln County. You can see that the Oregon State Police has about 12 troopers. The Sheriff's Office has 27 deputies. The Newport Police Department has about 18. Toledo has 6, and then Lincoln City has 27. So a total of 90 law enforcement officers who are actively responding to crime or investigating as detectives, kind of that everyday crime that we're having here in Lincoln County. After an arrest is made, it then moves to the district attorney's office. And that ends us into more of a prosecution and pretrial services type area. This is where the district attorney's office is reviewing police reports. We're determining whether or not to file charges. This often happens while a person is in custody or has been released from custody and is asked to come back about 48 hours after being released. Each case is reviewed by a deputy district attorney. They're making a charging decision. We're also making decisions about what we're going to recommend to the court regarding whether or not someone should be released from custody. We oftentimes have pretrial release hearings where defense may be asking for someone to be released or asking for their bond or security to be reduced. We are appearing on every single one of those cases. We're contacting the alleged victims in all of those cases, and we're making sure that we are providing accurate information to the court and advocating for either the person to stay in custody or for release conditions to make sure that the victim and the community are safe. We also at this stage take any felony case through what's called a grand jury. If anyone's ever served on a trial jury, grand jury is a little bit different. You are picked similarly through the jury process. But instead of spending one morning with a bunch of people outside of a courtroom waiting to see if you get picked, you're just automatically picked for grand jury, and then you serve on it for about 2 months. We have 2 different grand jury pools here in Lincoln County. We have a Tuesday group and a Thursday group. The grand jury consists of 7 individuals, and they listen to evidence, usually in the form of testimony, and they decide whether or not there's enough evidence to go forward on any felony case. This is a really great check on the system. This is really to make sure that when the district attorney's office is filing cases, especially felony cases, that there's 7 people from the community that are actually listening to the testimony and saying, yes, there is sufficient evidence, this should move on to the next stage. When we present a case to the grand jury and the grand jury finds that there's enough evidence, the case is then indicted, and that would be the charging instrument at that point. And then we also handle all court appearances on every single one of the cases. Any criminal case cannot be heard without the state present and without the defense attorney present. And so we are appearing every time a case is set for any type of hearing, the state, through the district attorney's office, is present, participating in that hearing. These are the types of cases that the district attorney's office prosecutes here in Lincoln County. Lincoln County is a bit different than some of the larger counties in our state, primarily because we do not have any municipal courts that prosecute crime in Lincoln County. So if you've ever lived in a larger city, for example, Eugene is one that comes to mind only because I previously worked there. But Eugene has a municipal court that prosecutes a large number of misdemeanor crimes. And so they really, because they have a municipal court in Eugene, they also have one in Springfield, they take off a large load of cases from the district attorney's office because the municipal courts are prosecuting their own misdemeanor crimes. We don't have that here in Lincoln County. Any crime that's committed in Lincoln County is prosecuted by the Lincoln County District Attorney's Office. There's no alternative place of prosecution other than through the circuit court, which is through the district attorney's office. You can see up here, we charge every type of crime from low-level theft, right? So if you steal a candy bar from McKay's, that could be prosecuted by the district attorney's office, all the way up until child sex abuse and homicide type cases. We do everything from the lowest level to the highest level here in Lincoln County. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, I hope so, but I will talk through it. These are some of our filing statistics from the last 2 years. So we also prosecute all juvenile criminal offenses as well. So if you commit a crime under the age of 18, usually we talk about from 12-year-old to 17 is usually the age range that we see. We prosecute all of those cases as well in our juvenile court. You can see in 2024, we had 36 juvenile criminal cases that were filed. This past year, we had 64. We almost doubled in number of juvenile cases. As far as felony cases being filed, in 2024, we had 317 cases for the entire year. Last year, we had 459, seeing almost over 100 additional cases last year of felony type crimes. As far as misdemeanors in 2024, we had 1,073. You can see we had an increase last year of 1,314. We also handle all extraditions. So if someone has a warrant from out of state, for example, if someone has a warrant out of New Jersey and they are caught in our state of Oregon, they're arrested by our local law enforcement and they go to our local jail. And then if they want to fight extradition, if they want to say that they shouldn't have to go back to New Jersey on the warrant, we represent the state in helping the extradition process. So that could be either proving that the person in custody is in fact the person that is wanted out of New Jersey. But then the next step would be communicating with that state to make sure that the governor's warrant that has to come from New Jersey to speak to the Oregon governor, essentially legitimizing the fact that this person does have a warrant in a different state. We also help with that entire process as well. We don't get a lot of those, but you can see in 2024 we had 8, and last year we had 16. The last column is contempt. Contempt, if you've heard of that before, it's kind of an interesting, it's not necessarily a misdemeanor crime, but it is punishable by time in jail. We most commonly see contempt cases typically when individuals are violating a restraining order, but we also see them when they're violating some type of court order as well. You could file a contempt as well. You can see that in 2024, we had 55 cases of contempt that were filed, and last year we had 122. As far as cases that are referred to our office, there's really two ways that that comes about. One is, again, by being arrested. If the person's in custody, then we are referred the case, and we have to review that typically within 24 hours of the person being in custody, unless it's on the weekend. The other option is that law enforcement can refer a case directly to us, or they can cite a person. Much like you might have gotten a traffic ticket before, law enforcement can also cite an individual for typically a misdemeanor crime and give you a court date to show back up instead of taking that person to jail. The last 6 months of last year, you can see we had 1,171 cases that were just referred to our office. We didn't file on every single one of those cases, but each one of those cases was reviewed by a deputy district attorney and a charging decision was made on that. You can see kind of through the graph that in July we had 142, August 193, September 272, October 188, November 154, and then December 222. I will say you can kind of see the holiday months tend to be higher for us, especially December. And then kind of right as summer is ending, which I think is probably some of the nicest weather that we get here on the coast, we see a spike in crimes committed here in Lincoln County as well. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's a bit of a breakdown of how many cases each employee in my office, each deputy district attorney is getting. So for the last 6 months of 2025, I reviewed 38 cases. My chief deputy district attorney reviewed 97. We have a deputy district attorney 3, which would be kind of the more experienced, of 1 is the least experienced, reviewed 91, a DDA 2 reviewed 129, and then you can see the DDA 1s, which is our entry-level position, they reviewed roughly around 250 cases in that 6-month time period. I think some interesting statistics about the jail is always helpful when you're looking at criminal prosecution. And so one of the things that most people might not know is that our jail has a total of 127 beds. We have 103 that are dedicated to the male population and then 24 that are dedicated to the female population. We also have 14 beds that are reserved by the Parole and Probation Department. That's what that PNP is. And those are really supposed to be used for individuals who are being sanctioned on probation or might be serving some type of sentence for probation cases. They're reserved, and so they're supposed to go to the probation department, but oftentimes we have such a crowded jail that they end up being used for new cases. Our average daily population in 2024 was 122. Our average population in 2025, and this was as of the middle of December of last year, was 135. And it costs about $185 per person per day to house them in the Lincoln County Jail. Currently, we have 11 inmates that are held with no bail, so there's no amount of money that they could post to get released. This is typically our homicide pending cases. They are typically held without bail. We also have a statute in Oregon where if someone has committed a violent felony and appears to be a risk to the community, the court could also hold them no bail. One individual that I know of off the top of my head that's being held with no bail right now is an individual that is facing a life sentence because he's been charged with his 3rd felony sex crime. So that would be a situation where it's not a homicide case, but because there's a potential danger to the public given past conduct and the currently alleged conduct, the state did seek for that person to be held without bail. There are 6 inmates currently charged with homicide within the jail. I believe the oldest one of those is from 2022. We also have 88 inmates awaiting trial and then 39 beds for sanctions. So that's usually a probation violation of that they're serving some type of sanction or that they've been sentenced to a case and have some type of jail time to serve. We also have, because we have such an overcrowding issues at times with the jail, we do have individuals who are forced released. And so what that means is that the court hasn't released them, but the jail doesn't have space for them to stay in the jail. You can see that in 2025, the end of 2025, we had 135 inmates last year that were released due to overcrowding, and 56 of those inmates were serving a sentence. What that means is that if someone committed a driving under the influence of intoxicants case and they were sentenced to 30 days jail, but the jail was overcrowded and didn't have space for them, they might have only ended up serving 2 of those days before getting released because of the crowding issue in the jail. When we move on to the next stage in the criminal justice process, we get to the adjudication/sentencing phase. That either means that we're resolving the case with some type of plea agreement, we are going to trial, and we're asking a jury to determine whether or not someone is guilty. Typically, those are ending with some type of conviction, and then an individual is sentenced. In 2025, our criminal jury trials, we had 53 total criminal jury trials in the entire year last year. Benton County, just kind of for proportion, Benton County has almost twice the population, and they only had 13 criminal jury trials. Polk County had 33 criminal jury trials, and then Clatsop had 21. So just kind of some comparison of some of our counties that are a little bit larger than us or close in population. We definitely, it seems like we go to trial quite a bit in our county. Which not only takes up a lot of our time within the office, but it also takes up a lot of our community's time, because that means all of you are getting called in for jury duty at a much higher rate than other counties. Another piece, once we get to after sentencing, through trial, through the conviction, is that we end up in the corrections, kind of that last phase. And the outcomes of those cases are kind of threefold. We see people go on probation. You can go on a bench probation, which is just probation to the court. You don't have a formal probation officer or anything like that, but you're technically on probation, and the court kind of holds authority over you still. You could also go on supervised probation. That is through the community justice department. That is where you would have a supervising probation officer that you would check in with, somewhat similar to what you would think the probation would look like. Sometimes an individual is sent to prison as part of their conviction, but then we also have treatment courts here in Lincoln County. I think we actually have some pretty robust treatment courts based on kind of my experience in other counties. In Lincoln County, we have 3 different treatment courts. We have drug court, which is presided by our presiding judge, Cheryl Bockhart. We have mental health court, which is through Judge Marcia Buckley. And then we have family support court, which is through Judge Amanda Benjamin. In drug court, and these are the statistics from January of 2023 through kind of the end of last year, but drug court had a total of 52 total graduates from that program. They had a 62% graduation rate, which was 10% higher than what the statewide rate is for treatment courts, for drug treatment courts. We currently have 39 participants out of 50 potential spots, and we have a 12% recidivism rate since 2020. Mental health court, we've had 16 total graduates since 2023. We've had a 53% graduation rate, which is 1% higher than the statewide average. We have 8 current participants out of 15, and we have a 7% recidivism rate since 2020. Family support court is individuals who either have an open ODHS case, which is the Department of Human Services, and typically those individuals may have an accompanying criminal case as well. You do not have to have a criminal case to get into family support court. There's individuals who enter into that treatment court just on the DHS case, and there's no criminal case whatsoever. But there are individuals who end up in family support court who have both types of cases. The whole intent behind family support court is really to not only help the parents with substance abuse issues, get them back on their feet, those types of things, but the whole really intent is really to reunify them with their children. We've had 12 total graduates from that support court. We've had a 57% graduation rate, which is almost double the statewide percentage. We currently have 11 current participants out of 15, and because of kind of the dual criminal and DHS piece, we don't really have a recidivism rate percentage for that, but it's definitely kind of a specialized court that is really focused on helping parents who find themselves in really difficult situations. I'd like to talk about the budget just for a brief minute, just in case anyone was curious. So the district attorney's office falls in the public safety portion of the Lincoln County general fund budget. For 2025-2026 budget, you can see that we're made up of, we make up 11%, 11.4% of the public safety budget. You can see also on here, we have patrol and investigations. That is related to the sheriff's office. Our budget is about $3 million in the district attorney's office, and that is what we are budgeted for. You can see patrol and investigation with the sheriff's office. They are about $3.6 million of that budget. As we move around, the county jail is, I think that's $8.4 million to run our jail here in Lincoln County. There's some other smaller pieces of the pie as well, such as jail health services, 1.4, the sheriff's office administration, 1.1, sheriff support services, about a 1 million. And then when we move up here, we also see youth tides. They are about $2.9 million of the public safety budget. What's interesting about this, I think, is in comparison, we are very close to the same amount budgeted for youth tides. We have 23.3 full-time employees that are general fund, and we handle a plethora of responsibilities in the district attorney's office. We not only do criminal prosecution, which is what I've primarily been talking about, we also handle all civil commitments. So anyone that is either a danger to themselves or a danger to others and is exhibiting a mental health diagnosis or crisis, we represent the state in trying to get them civilly committed when we get those referrals in. We also do all public record appeals from governing bodies within Lincoln County. So for example, if you ask to get records from another public entity and you need to appeal whatever ruling they do, that comes to the district attorney's office. We also handle multidisciplinary teams. We represent the state in a child abuse multidisciplinary team, an elder abuse multidisciplinary team. We have a sexual assault response team, which is called SART. And then we also have a DV council here in Lincoln County that we also represent the state on. We handle all grand juries. We are part of the major crime team, which means that anytime there's a major crime, typically there are homicides, but most recently we had a robbery out of Depot Bay, where they do a major crime team call out, and detectives from every law enforcement agency in Lincoln County respond to the scene and start investigating and supporting one another through those larger investigations. We are part of that. I respond to almost all of those major crime team call outs. Most recently, we had a homicide. I want to say it was the beginning of January. You probably read about it, where an individual was stabbed and then an individual was also shot. I was out there at 2 a.m. Helping law enforcement investigate that case. So that's something that we are part of and we assist on. We also have a crash team here in Lincoln County. So if there's any crashes that occur that where we have some type of significant or serious injuries, or death. Sometimes we have fatalities from those. We're part of the crash team and we respond to those scenes and help law enforcement investigate those cases. We also manage the deflection program. We have the coordinator within our office. Deflection is a program that is recent. It started in December of 2024, I believe, now that I'm thinking about it. And the whole intent really is to help individuals who are having substance use issues, help them get treatment and avoid the criminal justice system. So as many of you might know, a couple years back, they decriminalized simple possession of methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, those types of substances. Ultimately, they ended up recriminalizing those in 2024. And with that recriminalization, they started the deflection program. Not every county participates in the deflection program, but we are one of the counties that did choose to do that. Former Sheriff Curtis Landers and myself were the ones that really helped plan, along with a lot of community members, including Phoenix Wellness Center, Reconnections, and the Siletz Tribe, were really fundamental in creating the deflection program. Like I said, the whole intent is for an individual who gets found with some type of user quantity of those substances to get connected with treatment rather than being arrested and taken to jail. And we've seen really great success through the deflection program. We also have a child support enforcement unit within the district attorney's office. That unit is comprised of one deputy district attorney and then 2 support staff. And what they're focused on is helping collect child support for children living within Lincoln County. We also have Crime Victim Services and Rights Department in the district attorney's office. They are fundamental in being kind of the face of the office with anyone who is a victim of a crime. They have daily contact with victims here in Lincoln County. They are responsible for not only advising them of what their rights are as a victim of a crime, but also notifying them of court hearings, going over plea offers with them, sitting with them through trial, those types of things. We also are involved in officer-involved use of force or shootings. So when I first started, the end of 2024, we weirdly had 3 officer-involved shootings in about an 8-week time stretch. Each one of those I responded to. I worked alongside the investigators, and then ultimately I presented each one of those cases to the grand jury for a determination whether or not the use of force used by law enforcement was justified. We also attend parole board hearings at times regarding individuals who are in prison from our county. And then I'm also in charge of any expungements, individuals who are wanting to expunge their criminal records. Those all go through my office as well. Senate Bill 819 and clemency applications come through the district attorney's office as well. In comparison, Youth Tides has about 20.3 full-time employees. They are responsible for the youth shelter, juvenile probation, and juvenile expungements. So you can see that although our budget numbers are pretty close, the responsibilities in the district attorney's office far outweigh the Youth Tides. And so I think comparatively, I don't think that I don't think we're over budget, if that makes any sense at all. I think that we're doing a lot with the money that we're given by the county. Our current staffing, you might have seen this on Facebook, or I think that it was issued end of last year in one of my press releases. As the district attorney, the only people that I answer to is the citizens of Lincoln County. I don't have a boss other than you all. You all decide whether or not you want me in office. You all decide whether or not you're going to re-elect me in the future. I do have a chief deputy district attorney. His name is Michael Thornycroft, and he actually was here when I started in 2022. Ended up moving to Salem and ended up working for the Marion County District Attorney's Office. And then when I was elected in 2024, he ended up coming back and now serves as my chief deputy district attorney. Under him, there is supposed to be a digital forensic analyst. As you can imagine, in 2026, almost every single one of our cases has some type of digital evidence component. All of our law enforcement agencies in Lincoln County have worn body camera. You've probably heard of that. So every case has some type of video, usually of law enforcement making contact with people. We also just have a higher number of cases that have some type of digital component, whether that be photographs or recordings by citizens. We also seem to have a large number of child porn cases. We call those CCM cases, or child sexual abuse material cases. Those are highly technical cases that really do revolve around digital evidence of people uploading those types of images onto the internet. So that position is really there to support not only the digital aspect of criminal investigations, but also the digital aspect of criminal prosecution. Unfortunately, that position has been empty, I believe, since January of 2024. Yes. And that position is currently frozen by the county. I have not been able to fill that position. Underneath the chief DDA, there's also about 9 deputy district attorneys. Currently, I have 6 that are filled. One has resigned, and so they will be leaving in 2 weeks, and one is dedicated just to child support. So currently we're operating with about 4 criminal prosecution deputy district attorneys. There are 3 that are vacant right now. One is a grant funded through the probation department, and they're supposed to focus on the justice reinvestment program, which is really focusing on keeping people out of prison and safely supervising them in the community. That chief position also supervises a detective position. That position is vacant and has been frozen since January of 2025. The office staff is then split up into 2 different, 2 different managers. There's an administrative chief and there's an executive chief. The administrative chief is what I would consider to be the office manager. They are doing all the budgetary things. They are doing all the paperwork. They are also supervising the legal secretaries, the support staff. We have 8 support staff that are full-time, and we have 2 part-time employees. One of those positions is vacant and frozen, and then one of those positions has been out on admin leave by the county, by HR put that person on admin leave at the end of last year and has not returned yet. The executive chief is what I would consider to be the individual that really supervises child support and victim services. That person is supposed to be trained in both of those areas, and both of those require child support has a plethora of trainings before you can even review a file because of such confidential information in those things. And that individual is really trained in both of those areas to step in and actually assist in victim services and assist in child support if needed. That position also is the supervisor of our deflection coordinator, our deflection program as well. Unfortunately, that position is vacant and has been frozen since the middle of 2025. We have, you can see when we're fully staffed, we have 3 full-time victim advocates. One of those, 1.5 is grant funded, and then we have 2 part-time grant funded positions. The 2 red ones on there are vacant, and those are the 2 part-time positions. We have 2 child support staff, as I mentioned, and then we have the deflection coordinator. Currently, we have 10 public safety positions that are vacant. Not all of them are frozen, but we have 10 total that are vacant. One of the interesting things about the deputy district attorneys, so we do have 9 total that are budgeted for. As I indicated, that light blue one or that teal one is dedicated to child support enforcement. That is a grant funded position and they are unable to do anything but child support. The yellow individual is the one that's leaving here in 2 weeks, but the blue individual is that grant funded probation deputy district attorney. That position has actually been vacant for 17 months at this point. And unfortunately, because of the vacancy and because it was grant funded, we ended up having to give back over $260,000 to the state because we didn't have that position filled. That position was frozen by the county from May of 2025 through October of 2025. I was actually ready to fill that position in April. I had 2 individuals that I wanted to move into background checks. And it was at that time that I was alerted that that position was going to be frozen. To my knowledge, that position, the district attorney's office is the only department in Lincoln County that had a grant-funded position frozen. I was advised that any grant-funded position was not going to be frozen, but for some reason, when I was ready to hire into that position, it was frozen. And unfortunately, we've had to give back a large number of money to the state because of that frozen position. Right now, I have been granted exceptions to hire into a couple positions. One of those positions is the administrative chief position. Currently, I'm operating with no office management. I don't have an admin chief and I don't have an executive chief either. Unfortunately, I was ready to hire into the administrative chief position when the Human Resources Department changed the job description. They added a large number of additional duties from the executive chief position into the administrative chief position. And I've been asking for meetings to talk about the added duties, as I just don't think it's feasible for one person to do everything that they're asking them to do. Unfortunately, they will not meet with me to discuss the changes that were made to the job description. I have been given exceptions to the grant-funded position. That one is posted, and we're accepting applications. We also just recently, I want to say, what is today? 2 weeks ago, received exceptions from the Human Resources Director to start hiring into 2 of the Deputy District Attorney positions, which is great. And then they've also indicated that the 2 part-time victim advocate positions, we are allowed to start filling those because they are grant funded as well. The current concerns in the office are really due to staffing. We are operating with not enough people, and we're not able to fill enough positions, to be honest, and we're not getting a lot of applications. What this ultimately ends up doing is it not only impacts the district attorney's office, but it ultimately impacts our community. When we don't have enough deputy district attorneys, when we don't have enough staff to really fulfill the requirements that are statutorily obligated as the district attorney's office, we get an increase in backlog. We have over 400 cases right now that have been referred to the district attorney's office that have not been reviewed because we just don't have the staffing to do it. This also increases the caseload for each deputy district attorney because we have less prosecutors. They are ending up taking on more cases, and it becomes overwhelming. How that then translates is that we end up having to have more lenient resolutions. We cannot go to trial on every single case. We cannot seek the maximum on every single case because we just don't have the staffing to do it. And so you see resolutions or plea offers in cases that are probably less than what they should be because we just don't have the resources to push them to what they should be. We then end up with less accountability because individuals are getting a lesser sentence than what they might necessarily deserve. It also leads to dismissed cases. We've had to probably dismiss around 15 cases in the last 6 months because we either couldn't find an individual, we don't have a detective position, and that detective position is crucial for going out and serving subpoenas on individuals that are hard to find for trial. And if we can't find someone for trial, we can't prove the case, and we end up having to dismiss the case. It also leads to low morale within the office. Everyone is just very stressed, has large caseloads. It's hard to keep up with your caseload, which leads to burnout and which ultimately leads to turnover. And then it just kind of becomes this never-ending cycle. When you look at the criminal process, you can see the district attorney's office is involved in not only the prosecution, but also the adjudication sentencing, the trial or the plea offer stage, and then ultimately the correction phase as well, whether or not someone's getting into treatment court or they're going to prison or they're going on probation. And so in order to have a functioning criminal justice process or system, you not only need law enforcement to respond and investigate crime, but you also need the district attorney's office to prosecute crime. And then you need the probation department to supervise individuals who have committed crimes. You need all 3 of us in order for the system to work efficiently and the way that it's meant to work. And so if you're missing one of those pieces, right, if you don't have law enforcement to investigate, the DA's office can't prosecute. If you only have law enforcement to investigate and the DA's office doesn't have resources to prosecute, then the person gets released and nothing happens. You really do need all 3 pieces of that puzzle in order for a functioning criminal justice system. That's all I have. I don't know if that was too long. I hope I didn't bore any of you. So I'll move into the kind of the question period. I don't know if, I think it's a small enough group. I have a second microphone, so if you feel like you need to ask the question in a microphone, I'm happy to bring it down, but you want it?
What?
Thanks, Casey. But yeah, I just want, sorry. Like I said, transparency is really important to me. I want to make sure that individuals have information and have access to me. And so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Hopefully I have the answer.
Yes, thank you. So I actually did the last town hall in City before. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like the only real change that's happened since there's got the authorization to hire for the grant-funded position.
Yes, so I did get that. The grant-funded position has been approved to be hired, and then 2 weeks ago they've allowed me to hire into two of the general fund DDA positions as well. So that is now posted on the website as well. Yeah.
I, of course, have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
But I'll just start with, how are you not in control of the job description of the people in your office? How is it that that can be changed without your knowledge or input?
That's a great question. And that's one thing that I struggle with a lot because I think I'm just too close to the microphone. Sorry, I was getting weird feedback. That is one thing that I'm really struggling with because I think of anyone who is in the best position to know what a job duties should be, I think it's someone within the office, right? But I've been told that the department heads and the elected officials have absolutely no control over job descriptions, that the Board of Commissioners does not even have control over job descriptions, that is solely within Human Resources discretion. And no one will meet with me to discuss that.
Okay, then you talked about the positions, because I went to the new board presentation. So you talked about positions that you can fill. How many positions are you being locked and filling?
Currently, 4. 4 are currently frozen.
And they are protected.
The detective position, the digital forensic analyst position, the executive chief position, and then 1 deputy district attorney.
And 3 that give you to help you.
I don't know. I think just spreading the awareness about what's going on in the county right now, and obviously reaching out to, Commissioner Miller's here. Commissioner Miller is the only person in county administration that will speak to me right now. So I think reaching out to Commissioner Miller is helpful, but honestly, Commissioner Chuck is the one that I think would benefit from community input.
Through email, letters?
I think either of those options, yes.
And I want to thank you for following up on the records request from Waldport. I don't know what the outcome of that was from the anonymous person who asked for records. Did they get them?
I believe they have gotten some of them. I don't know if they've gotten all of them, and that's something I need to follow up on.
So in December 2024, he asked the city of Waldport for records. I was told it was going to cost me $35,000 for those records. I've appealed, but I haven't received a letter yet to the city of Waldport. Will I be getting that?
Have you asked for a fee waiver or a fee reduction? Did you ask that from the city?
Not from you.
From me? Because I sent you an email after the last town hall, but then I never heard back from you.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe we could connect after the town hall. Is that possible?
Great.
Okay.
Yes. It's a little outrageous. $35,000 is somebody's salary. It's a brand new car.
Yes.
I'll take donation.
Yeah, Wallace, first of all, I want to thank you for all the work you're doing. I think it's very amazing that you've managed to hold this together with all the shortages with the table. My question is, what is the downstream damage? Cases like the Child Advocacy Center, juveniles. Could you speak to that?
As far as what our staffing shortages impacts those things?
Yes.
I think that we all work together, right? And so one of the things that I think has been most detrimental in having the staffing issues is our child multidisciplinary team, which the Children's Advocacy Center is a part of, and it does impact our children here in Lincoln County. That multidisciplinary team meets bi-monthly, so it's every other Thursday. It's supposed to be this, like I said, multidisciplinary team. So Department of Human Services shows up, the District Attorney's Office comes, the Children's Advocacy Center comes, a representative from all of our law enforcement agency comes, There's representatives from the Siletz tribe. We usually have a school district individual there too. And the whole intent is really to staff cases, or not necessarily cases, but staff DHS reports and figuring out whether or not kids are safe in our community. We also review every Carly's Law. I don't know if anyone here has heard that term before, but Carly was a little girl up in the Portland area, and she ended up dying from some abusive head trauma, abusive physical trauma to her. And after she died, we ended up enacting a law called Carly's Law. And what that is that if there's any type of suspicious injury to a child, it has to be reviewed by the multidisciplinary team. And the whole intent there is really to try to suss out child abuse before a child loses their life, right? So we also review every Carly's Law that comes in. And law enforcement and DHS and doctors are mandatory reporters. They have to report if there's a suspicious injury to a child. So during the staffing, I mean, I would say we're still in it, but during the heat of last year, when we really were low staffed and really struggling through just our normal caseloads, I wasn't able to send someone to those meetings. There wasn't a DA representative because we just didn't have the person, the resources, the time to go to that meeting. And what I think that ultimately was detrimental for was the kids, was the juveniles, the youth in our county, because there wasn't a district attorney or a deputy district attorney at those meetings listening to these cases, you know, asking questions, asking for additional investigation, those types of things. And I would say that in the last 2 months, I have now made it a priority because I do think it's really important that there is a DA representative at that multidisciplinary team meeting, because that is where you're really hearing the beginning stages of child neglect and child abuse. And if we can step in before those cases become more serious, right? I think that the community wants that. I think the state wants that. They want us to be protecting children on the front end, rather than criminal prosecution is really just holding people accountable for their conduct. And so I think one of the things that the staffing has affected is our ability to be part of those group discussions about child sexual abuse, child physical abuse, child neglect in our community, because we just didn't have the people to send to those meetings, if that makes sense.
And my last question is, I understand the DDA, the pay scales have been jumped down many years. There was just one commissioner here controlling the budget, and they went to mediation recently. And I'm assuming, like her, that they actually won that arbitration. Has the pay scales actually kicked in yet? Because I know there was a further delay for some reason why they weren't being paid. So are you going to be able to advertise your new positions at the higher scale? Because we're losing people, right? Because they go straight across the border and they can make $30,000 or $40,000 more.
Yes.
And have a much smaller caseload and a much more reasonable house price.
Yes, and that's been one of the struggles here in Lincoln County, is that, as most of you know, to live here is expensive. You know, and I've lost individuals who loved the Lincoln County area, but they couldn't afford to live here. And weirdly enough, they moved to Portland, and it was cheaper to live in Portland, and they made $40,000 more. I mean, it's hard to compete with those things. The deputy district attorneys are part of a smaller union within the large county union, and they did ultimately end up arbitrating their pay scales this past year. And ultimately they were successful in doing that, which is great, which is exactly what we need to not only attract people to Lincoln County, but keep people here in Lincoln County. And it did take the county about 3 months to apply that ruling to the current DDA's salaries, but they are letting me advertise at the higher scale, which I'm hoping will bring in more applicants.
Anyone else? Questions?
You can ask questions of Casey too.
Okay. One of the things I'm interested in knowing about is,
I assume that in the 2025 budget, the positions you had were funded.
Yes.
What happens to that what happens to that money if you don't have people in those positions?
It goes back to the general fund. So the county gets it back.
Can you be more specific as to where it goes?
I don't know. They won't tell me.
And so are you guys in the budgeting phase?
Yes, we're just starting to gear up for the budgeting phase currently. I think that will take place over the next couple months.
Is there ever an argument made that we had X amount of money that was not spent last year on positions and like this year?
I think I could make the argument. I don't know if I will win the argument right now. You know, and I think the interesting thing is that I don't think I need more money. You know, I mean, I think that there are times, right, where you could be fully staffed and that's not enough, right? You need to add positions or things like that. I don't think I need more positions. I just need to be able to use the money that's already been approved and fill the positions that have already been approved. And so I think that's the hardest part, is that I'm not even, you know, typically the district attorney's office is under budget, and typically it's about $500,000. Like even when we're fully staffed, we're usually under budget just on, you know, travel expenses and witness fees and those types of things, which you can't predict accurately depending on what trials go that year. And I'm happy to give that back if there's another place that needs to use that. So it's not that I need more money next budget cycle. I just need to be able to use the money that they told me I could use last budget cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing that I have heard you talk about in the Newport presentation was why our county has so much more crime than other counties that are nearby. And I think that's important for people to know, so you could take a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, when you compare us, I mean, even when you just saw our jury trials alone to Benton County, and I do have stats of us compared to those counties. Benton is about twice our size. Polk is larger than us as well, about 30 to 40,000. And we have more crime here than in Polk. More criminal cases are filed than in Polk. And we're very close with Benton County on how many cases are filed. Even though we have a population of roughly 51,000, that we all know that we're a high tourist county, right? Honestly, I think the majority of our cities, I mean, Lincoln City, Depot Bay, Newport, Waldport, Yachats, they're all huge tourist destinations, and we have a beautiful chunk of the Oregon coast here. And with that, right, brings in people, and with people brings in more crime. We see a huge spike in the summer of kind of our day-to-day, you know, in custody cases, because we have so much tourist population here. We see a lot of driving under the influence of intoxicants cases. I know you all know we just had the Seafood and Wine Festival last weekend. I think we had almost 10 new driving under the influence of intoxicant cases just from the Seafood Wine Festival alone. And we also see a really high increase of domestic violence with tourists as well. People come here for the weekend, they get into a fight, maybe they go out to the bar and drink, things of those nature. And so even though our population, you know, the people who live here on a day-to-day basis is 51,000, we see such a high increase in tourist rates, and that really does affect our overall amount of crime here in Lincoln County. And not that Polk County is not a beautiful place to visit, but I just don't think that they have the same tourism that we do here in Lincoln County.
Well, thank you. You know, Michael on at the Bonita Beach. I've got two questions this time. Pretty much just touched on one. Earlier on, you had a slide, the case in 24 and 25 that your office moved forward. I believe it had its tradition, what, 8 to 16, but that slide, everything with that. My understanding is you basically have a bigger office, staffing-wise, in 24 than 25, where it certainly didn't get bigger over time. So to see that kind of a jump, I mean, what would you attribute it to? I mean, is it really that many more cases being incoming to your office, or you are aggressive on what you do, or it's just overall crime areas going up in?
I think it's a combination of things. I do think that crime does feel like it's up. I can tell you just from like a day-to-day how many cases we get on an in-custody docket. I mean, every day we come in and there could be 2 new cases that have to be reviewed, or a Monday where we have 18 new cases from the weekend that need to be reviewed. Those numbers feel like they are higher than they were last year. But as far as looking at 2024 to 2025, 2024, we went through a significant staffing crisis. When I took over in June of 2024, it was myself plus 1 other deputy district attorney, and we're supposed to have 8. So we worked a lot of hours. We ended up having to ask the Department of Justice to lend us one of their prosecutors to help us, and he was actually embedded in our office for 3 months. And then we were able, by the end of 2024, we were able to get kind of to the staffing level that we are now. So I think a part of the numbers in 2024 is because it's not necessarily that we didn't have the cases to review, it was that we didn't have the people to charge, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, I believe it said 2 weeks ago, you got an exception to start filling positions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm aware it's even rather public. I've been asking for exceptions for quite some time. I've certainly, board meetings, was in the paper. So I'm curious if you can answer, well, what changed in the last 2 weeks?
I don't know.
Were you providing any explanation?
No, I got an email out of the blue from Human Resources just saying that Human Resources and the finance director have decided that they've looked at the numbers and they've decided that it's okay for me to hire one of the DDA positions. And then, like I indicated, I have one DDA who's put in his last day of notice. And so when I asked if I could fill that position because that was going to be vacant soon, they then said, well, you have to fill out this exception request form. I had no idea there was even a form. I've been very, as you said, I've been very vocal. I've been to Board of Commissioner meetings. I've sent agenda requests to get on the agenda at Board of Commissioner meetings. And in those emails, I've always said, if there's another way for me to make these requests, please let me know. No one emailed me back. And so I had no idea there was even an exception request, autofill form. Apparently it had been active for 3 months, and I wasn't aware of that. So then I filled out that form, and then that second position was approved too. But other than that, that's the information that I'm working on right now. No one will really tell me why I'm getting exceptions now. So.
You've answered it the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
This question may be for Commissioner Miller.
Perfect.
You mentioned they are not allowing you to fill these positions.
Mm-hmm.
And they. Can you be specific who these people are, if you don't mind naming them? And who do they report?
Yeah, so again, being an elected official was never on my bucket list. And so I've learned a lot in the last year and a half. And I was always under the impression that the Board of Commissioners, right, we have 3 of them here in Lincoln County, that they were the ultimate authority regarding county business. I don't think that I answered to Casey, and I don't think he would view it like that either, but I think that as elected officials, we're supposed to work collaboratively together. And I fully recognize that the county tells me what I can spend, right? And that seems fair. It's their money, it's not my money. For a long time, I thought the Board of Commissioners was in charge of the county. I would say in the last 3 months, maybe longer, but the last 3 months, it has been concretely that is not the case. If any of you have been following the county agendas, they recently changed the personnel rules in Lincoln County. When was that? Back in October. And what that did was essentially place the county administrator as the person in charge of almost everything, to be frank, within the county. We don't have a county administrator. So I'm not sure why we changed the personnel rules to a position that we don't currently have filled. But so for a while there, I felt like when I say they wouldn't let me fill positions, it was the majority of the Board of Commissioners, right? That the two of the three were not approving the exceptions. In the last 3 months, last 2 months, I would say that is no longer the case. I don't even know if the Board of Commissioners knows that I'm requesting exceptions. Who I think is currently in charge of the county is the head of HR, which is David Collier. And I believe he is the acting county administrator, and that is how he is signing documents right now.
So when you think about the authority of the board that is given to us as commissioners from state statute, it's very broad. How each county exercises that authority differs by county, okay? So in this case, when she says they, right, you would probably tend to think that they be boards, in our case, 3 county commissioners. How the commission delegates its authority can be very wide-ranging. So, to give you an example, like Nolan County, they have a very, what I would say is chair-heavy delegation of the authority of the elected officials into one individual. In this case, it's the chair of the board, is also the administrator, and has, a tremendous amount of authority consolidated to one person. What you've seen happen to our board over time is a similar phenomenon, okay? So, Jenna and I are just wanting to have a seat at the table. I'm advocating that the board have more representation and that we bring in our elected officials, all of our elected officials with more agency. What you just see over time is, there's no reverence for that style of leadership with us right now. We have 2 commissioners, and if you watch these meetings, she's requesting items on the agenda. I'm, as a commissioner, requesting items on the agenda and not able to get those into the public meeting discussion. So what I really think is best for the community is that we all have a seat at the table and that we can have these discussions. What Jenna is doing today should be something from my perspective, that she doesn't need a town hall to do it, although that's good, and then we come to you. But these are the types of things that should be discussed within the public meeting itself, right? Your elected officials, your HR director, your county administrator, when you technically have a county administrator, all together talking about money, the trade-offs, the needs. And that's just not something we're doing collaboratively. I mean, that's just a simple way to put it. I don't think it's the best model for us. I want to hear from Jenna. She is the subject matter expert in public safety. Now, the board ultimately has authority in the bottom line for the county coffers, and really it's the budget committee actually that approves the final budget, which includes for citizens. So yeah, we're just not doing this well. We're not collaborating. The power authorities been consolidated into a few, and we just don't want to talk about it.
Excuse me.
If that makes any sense.
Are we not out there trying to find a solution for a situation here? We have got a county that's totally went off the rails. What is the last time I knew, Jenna is duly elected by us people regularly, like a credit, okay? The only thing she has to do is answer to the commissioners is money. That's all they are. Her office is independent. What I want to know is how can an at-will employee, meaning the department head, county council, How in the hell did they get this kind of power? And the thing is, as people, until that's rated out, we are being run by a cabal. These are department heads. They're not elected. And they stonewall these people right here. What are you going to do about it? It's got to quit. And I say Wednesday morning, we should be asking for some real questions of who they should be fired. I don't care if the department heads or not. They're at-will employees. They're out of work. Thank you.
So, I've been curious about what's going on with the county. So I've been attending meetings intermittently in person and watching them in video for the last 6 months to a year. I just appreciate as a police person, a lay person who does not know the terminology that's always used at the county. I find often that commissioners and the joint council herself will say, well, that is up to the county. It's always, well, the county decides. Who the heck is the county? We need clarification. When you say the county, it sounds like some monolith of people, unknown, unnamed people. As a lay person of the public, I would like an answer to that question.
Who is the county? I should have an org chart here too. Well, in my mind, it starts with you. You elect elected officials, okay? In this case, that's 3, okay? From there, the board may delegate its authority to key people. It could be the county administrator. And then the county administrator, you look at Ordinance 517, then he supervises department heads, not other elected officials, okay? So when we say the county, really, there's you, there's 3 elected officials, and just watch the lines drop down. And eventually that spreads out to over 500. Gosh, does that make sense, Paul? It doesn't.
No. Why not say, okay, this is up to the chief administrator. This is up to the county council to keep right there.
You get it.
That's not my job, you know?
I agree, yeah. So if you look, say, for example, at my agenda requests, I'm saying, can we let the conversation breathe? Can somebody show up? And we're not making much progress of having a breathable conversation.
Unbelievably, I've been following you guys too. And I would like to know, is the Oregon Ethics Commission going to be doing anything about what's going on at the county commissioners meetings? Because it's appalling to me that we have an elected official, Casey, who can't get anything on the agenda. We have another elected official, Jenna, who can't get anything on the agenda. That's completely against Oregon Ethics Commission rules.
There's no ORS that dictates the county. There's no ORS that says one commissioner wants something on the agenda, you have to do it. It needs to be within the, possibly that could be created. I mean, I guess we could see ORS that mandates that, but I spoke to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. There's no law that gives me agency to be sure I can downstream, whatever you would like us to talk about.
Well, I can take the people at the board meeting saying, I would like to talk about this on the agenda. I've seen you say it, and it's like it's blocked. Who is blocking that?
Well, every council inside when the commissioner's office is the one who has the final word on the agenda, works with a staff person to create what you see.
Like virtually, but I'm useful.
Yeah.
It comes back.
Hello.
I'm Sherry Brubaker, and I'm running the county commissioner. And I'd just like to say that I believe in a transparent and cooperative government. And I'd like to ask you, what crimes are surrounding our community right now? What type of crime is it? Is it the crimes against children? Is it property crime? Is it violent crime? And are kind of multi. And what of these are not being prosecuted, getting bodies, not is not held accountable? And what can we as a community do about that?
So we are focusing our attention on obviously person crimes. So that would be like your assaults, sex abuse, those types of things. And then obviously your violent crimes. We have, like I mentioned, 6 pending homicides. That is a very large number for a population of our size. 3 of them are scheduled to go to trial this year, which again is a pretty large number. We also have a very large number of child sex abuse cases. I'm not going to lie to you. Because of kind of the staffing in my office, those types of cases I think are some of our most important, right? Our violent crimes, our child crimes. But they require a certain level of experience. And not everyone in my office has that level of experience. And so I think what's not getting prosecuted is your lower level crimes, right? So your trespass, your disorderly conduct, your lower level thefts, maybe some harassments depending on the situation. That's what's kind of falling through the cracks right now because we just don't have the resources to do all of those. Where I see it really affecting our community is again kind of in the negotiation process of resolving cases. So I have individuals who should be going to prison, right? Obviously, this is all under the premise that they're convicted, they either plead guilty, they're found guilty at trial, those understandings. But I have cases where someone is facing a mandatory minimum sentence of 90 months day for day in prison on very, very intense child sex abuse type crimes, right? And I have to decide, do I have the resources to go to trial on that? Do I have the personnel to go to trial on that? And if I don't, that means I have to offer that person 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, right? I have to offer them something less than what they would get at trial because no reasonable person would plead guilty to what they're going to get at trial, right? You're going to take the risk. You're going to see if you're found guilty. And then if you are, then you would get exactly what the state's offering you on the front end, right? There's no reason not to go to trial unless I make a deal with you. And in order to make a deal, that means that I have to essentially say, you should be getting 90 months, but because I don't have the resources to try this case, I don't have the resources to go to trial, I'm going to give you 3 years, right? I'm going to give you 30 months. I'm going to give you 60 months. And that's a really hard conversation to have with victims. And that also affects our community safety, right? Because you have someone who the legislator has said, when you commit this crime, you should go to prison for X amount of time. And I'm really circumventing that because I don't have the resources. I don't have the resources to put someone in a jury trial for 2 weeks to try a case that is really important to the community. And so that's how I think it's really affecting, I'm a big believer that if a crime is committed, we should be prosecuting that, right? We have crimes on the books for a reason. There obviously are mitigating information in each case we look at individually, but people should be held accountable for their criminal conduct. I think that's why we have the system that we have. And so I really want us to be pursuing crime, right? Whether that's low level, high level, because those crimes affect someone, right? The individual who's running in the middle of the highway, and causing you to slow down, that's affecting someone, right? And that we don't want that person to get hit. We don't want you to hit that person. But those are the cases that we just don't have the time to prosecute, but it's also affecting how we resolve cases as well. And I think people are getting more lenient offers right now because we just don't have the ability to go to trial on everything. And the defense attorneys know that, they're not dumb, right? They know that we're short-staffed and that if they just push everything to trial, they're going to win some of those because we're going to have to resolve it for something less than because we don't have the resources. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
is there something that you can do at the school? Like, how can you really help? How can the community help? Is there a way to help support a safe community? How can we come together to improve?
You know, I think at this point, I think obviously just raising awareness about, you know, kind of what is going on and how the district attorney's office is affected kind of by the staffing right now is really helpful. But I will be very frank with you. I think until we have a different majority board of commissioners, I don't know if any of these issues will be resolved.
So I actually had a question for both you and Commissioner, one each. So I think it's a really good theory in order to resolve the problem, you gotta know how you got there.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, or why would you say these positions were frozen? And then to the Commissioner, I wanted to ask, I had heard that we had received clarification from the state about the rules for appointing a new commissioner, and that we had, so I'm just trying to wonder what that clarification was as we move forward with the second appointee or possibilities. Yeah.
You bet. Number one, well, let me jump to the second one first on the vacancy. So last you saw Commissioners Chuck and myself, we had each selected 5 individuals. We had no matches, okay? At that point, Commissioner Chuck decided that we should get an opinion from our legal counsel about what to do next. Legal counsel seemed to be saying that we were under this 30-day timeline. And really it was just kind of left a little bit obscure, right? I was saying that no, we're a nonpartisan board. We're not restricted to this 30-day timeline. I reached out to the governor's office of legal counsel. They did not respond to me. However, my understanding is now the Secretary of State and the state clerk's office,
Correct.
I believe, says no, there is no 30-day expedite rules. Okay, so I've seen that it's on the agenda for Wednesday for us to re-engage the discussion. So what Commissioner Chuck and I need to do, I think we need to come up with some sort of compromise. I proposed that possibly he simply select from 2 of mine, and I select from 2 of his. We just go into interviews. So I really think that, you know, I'm ready to go. We can have this discussion, and we just need to find a way that it meet the middle. Anything else on that one? And what was the first question again?
The first question was, how did we get to have these positions broken in the DA?
Gotcha. Thanks. Okay. Last year, around June, we started scheduling our budget committee meetings. At the same time, there was vague information that we were having a $4 million shortfall. So our budget committee meetings became under, you know, we're kind of midway, if you will, and I was receiving notification from Human Resources Department that department heads could request, and we had a freeze. We had a freeze on all new hires. Okay, the department heads could request to HR if they felt like they had a position that could be hired, okay? And then HR would send to the board through email exceptions to those frozen positions. I said at this point, we can't do it this way. This will constitute what's called a serial meeting because they're asking us to make decisions through email. And I said, let's do this in a work session. Let's do it in a budget committee meeting. And eventually I made a report to the Oregon Government's Ethics Commission, and they're investigating us for making a decision through email, and still under investigation. So, right.
And I'll tell you from my perspective, and then I know you have had your hand up, so you're next. So as I indicated, when I took over in June of 24, I was down several DDAs. It was just myself and one individual who had been there less than 6 months. And so I actively started filling positions, right? That's what you do when you got vacancies. And so by the time April of 25 rolled around, I was 2 DDA positions away from being fully staffed, which the Lincoln County DA's office, I don't think has been fully staffed in years, but I was 2 positions away. I had 2 people that I interviewed, I liked, I wanted to move into backgrounds to fill those positions. And so I was literally like, I could taste being fully staffed, of DDAs. And so when I asked to move them into backgrounds, we had interviewed them, they were great, interviewed them, asked to move them into backgrounds. I was told by HR, oh no, those positions are frozen. And that was in April of 2025. I then responded and I said, well, that's odd because I got an email a week prior and with a list of what positions in my office were going to be frozen. And those positions weren't on the list. It was just the detective position. It was the 2 part-time victim advocate positions. And that was it. Those were the 3 that were going to be frozen. So then I was told, oh, well, it was a mistake. They should have been included on the initial list. And so those 2 people have found gainful employment. I actually, when I heard a few weeks ago that I was going to get exceptions to those positions, I actually called them to see if by, happenstance that they were still wanting to come work here. And unfortunately, they do not. They've been hired elsewhere, which is understandable. But they were 2 really great people who had connections to our county, which is really hard to find, as you know, for people to get people to come here and want to stay here. And so, yeah, and I've asked multiple times about how what criteria was the board looking at regarding, who got exceptions or, how many from each department, how many positions from each department were frozen. And no one will give me that information. And I don't even think Commissioner Miller has been given that information.
No, and that was in the details, right?
I know.
It could be helpful to collaborate on these things.
Oh no, blue shirt. You gotta go to blue shirt first. Sorry, I'm sure you have a name.
And as much as we're getting into the finities of the bureaucracy around how choked up you seem to be in being able to do your job that we elected you to do. I have 3 questions, but now 2. The first one was going to be about open carry, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and do anyway.
Okay.
The second, I think, is that, and they're really mostly about public safety and personal safety. So the second, I'm really concerned just in general about the broad overreach of the federal law enforcement, especially DHS. And I'm wondering what, as the county DA, you would have information on as far as collaboration, and hopefully not, with DHS, and what kind of warnings we would get as they move into the more rural areas of the country. Speaking as somebody who lives in a very tourist-heavy place, which involves all international people coming in both to work and spend money.
Right.
What kind of warnings would we be getting from local law enforcement or DA's office?
That's a tough question because there's not a lot of communication happening from them to us. Does that make sense? I know that I don't know if they're active in our community right now. I do know that they had done a few, I don't even know what you call it, but a few things. Yeah, I don't really know what to call it. I know that they have been in our community in the past, probably the past 6 months.
Specifically?
No, not Yachats. I believe it's the Newport area is where we had heard that they were. They don't give us a lot of notice, and I'm not even sure if they gave Newport PD notice that they were going to be in the area. I think it was a bit either at the same time or maybe afterwards is when the police department received word, which is really, really difficult, right? Because I think the way in which the federal government is doing those things, I don't know what to call them, right? Can be very scary, right? Not only for the individual, very scary, not only for the individual in which they're seeking, but also just the community in general. And we're seeing that in other places in the state of Oregon as well. There was an incident in Marion County where it was the federal, I think it was DHS, something ICE, something like that, were trying to, take someone into custody, and they were unmarked. They, didn't have any markings on the car, no markings on their body. And there was a female, I don't know if it was a female actually, I think it was, but the person they were trying to get was in the passenger seat. The driver was in the driver's seat, and the driver ended up, I think, like running over a foot or something and speeding off because they had no idea who these people were. I mean, I can put myself in that situation, and it would be extremely scary, right? And so I wish that there was more communication. I can tell you that our sheriff has contacts with the federal agencies. And there's a big push right now, I think, from the Sheriff's Association across Oregon to have more communication, because it's very alarming for our citizens. It's very alarming for tourists coming to the area if we're going to have these types of situations. Unfortunately, the state just doesn't have a lot of power over the federal agencies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My last question is just an ORS question, actually. It's a little nerdy, and it also actually applies. Are federal law enforcement considered peace officers?
I believe they are. I'd have to review the statute. I think that they can act as peace officers.
Okay. And I was just reading up on this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a concerned person trying to understand things. So this is ORS 161260. Use of physical force in resisting arrest. I'm just going to read it real quick.
Yeah.
The person may not use physical force to resist an arrest by a peace officer who is known or reasonably appears to be a peace officer, whether the arrest is lawful or unlawful. My question revolves specifically around that word reasonability and how you would clarify that.
So, yes, that's a great question. I feel like there's a second statute after that does talk about if the force is unreasonable. Maybe it's a jury instruction.
It is State v. Wright in 1990, where arrest is made with excessive force. Arrestee may use reasonable physical force in self-defense against excessive force being used by arresting officer. Which kind of circles back to that reasonability part. Whether the arrest is lawful or unlawful, if an arrest is using excessive force, or if an arrest is being made unlawfully, would that go against its reasonability in appearance?
Potentially. And I think that it's so hard because it's such a case-by-case basis. But yes, I think that reasonableness, right, is not what I think is reasonable. It's typically what the average person in a similar situation would think is reasonable.
So if an average person saw their neighbor being kidnapped by an armed person and they shot that person in defense of their neighbor, what would happen then?
Well, I can't give you legal advice. But what I can say is, in the Marion County situation that I was talking about, hours later, the federal agency actually called and reported that they had been assaulted by the individual driving the car. And Marion County did not prosecute that person because the circumstances did not make it seem like they were law enforcement officers. They weren't sure what they were doing, right? So I think it's very much a case-by-case basis. But I don't know how to say this, but I think that a reasonable person, right, in that type of situation would have no clue that what's about to happen is somehow lawful, right, because of the surrounding circumstances. So I don't know if that helped or answered your question at all. Well, I'm a lawyer. I got to give you something of a giving, right? Any other questions? Oh, you got the mic already. Look at you go.
Two more questions at this time.
Okay.
Earlier, we talked about workload in larger jurisdictions that have a municipal court. I take those are typically funded, but I think by the municipalities.
Correct.
Okay. And then just what's your normal? If you could pick one item or identify one aspect, what is your office's biggest challenge? It sounds like it's not specifically funding. What is it? approval to fill positions? Is it the ability to recruit positions, or is it just the lack of cooperative administration? What is your biggest challenge?
I think my biggest challenge, honestly, is the lack of collaboration with the county administration. I think that I got into law because I really am black and white. I'm a very logical person. I feel like I'm reasonable. And then I got into law and I thought law is going to be black and white, and it's absolutely not, right? But I like to know things, right? Like if someone could sit down with me and they could have explained, we're freezing these 8 positions and it's going to give us X amount of savings and we're doing this for every department, right? I think I could maybe logically get on board, right? Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying. It's the lack of information and the lack of the ability to just get information and to have my questions answered. And then I think a piece of that also is the lack of control over my office. So not being able to change job descriptions or having them changed without any input, or, they approved the grant-funded DDA position, but the job description didn't really articulate that this person was in charge of our treatment courts and was part of downward, and like there was pieces of, I think, the job description that I would have included in it so that someone applying would know what the position does, right? That it's a specialized position. And when I asked to add those things in, they said, you don't have control over job description. I'm like, I'm not changing it. I want people to know what they're applying to. So it's those like day-to-day of, it shouldn't be this hard for us to work together, but it is.
Would you agree it's fair to say that there's been no consistency whatsoever?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Jenna Wallace, and the things that you're for holding these public forums. We're grateful to ask you questions directly and not questions answered. So thank you for that. My first question is, it appears that there's a statewide shortage of public defenders. Mm-hmm. And so if we are trying to increase our ability to prosecute people, is that having a shortage of public defenders going to hinder prosecution as well? Because there's been statewide cases being dropped due to people not being able to be represented.
Yeah, so weirdly enough, Lincoln County has not experienced those shortages like other counties have. We've been very blessed that we haven't had to dismiss any cases because of lack of a defense attorney. And occasionally we have had to have individuals released from custody because they aren't represented. And I think that there's a current, I forget if it's the 9th Circuit or if it's the Supreme Court, but there's a current ruling out there that says that if they're not represented within 7 days of being in custody, that they then have to be released. And so we have had 1 or 2 of those, but primarily we have actually, we've actually been very, very privileged to have the amount of defense attorneys in our community that take appointed cases. I do see what you're saying though, right? If the whole intent is us increasing charging, that obviously will increase the amount of cases that need likely a public defender or something of those sorts. I don't necessarily think though that it would create such a issue, because I think the individuals who are part of our defense consortium right now, they're not running out of the ability each month to take new cases, if that makes sense. What I think that it would help with is that if I had proper staffing as far as deputy district attorneys, it would lower their caseloads so that they could put more time and attention into each case, and then obviously not be resolving them, more lenient than maybe they should. If that answers your question.
My second question is, I've been reading on the minutes or agenda or the Board of Commission meetings, big mentions of some county member who is under disciplinary action, and their request not to have a public hearing. And my question is how a public official gets special treatment when it comes to
disciplinary actions and possible litigation to the county itself when an ordinary citizen doesn't get any sort of, privacy or,
This feels like a Casey question.
Yeah, what?
So, I was trying to find out, but basically it says that there is somebody who is in the county, if there's supposed to be a discussion on a county employee under disciplinary and that was talking about possible litigation against counties as of that. Well, I will try to.
So we have a function for that executive session, right? Typically, the community can't attend. Media usually can in that type of, well, they can in that type of executive session. They cannot report. But I can't get an executive session.
Right. How, the public official it is not where ordinary citizens not. I mean, it's transparency.
Yeah.
And so, like, in a complete transparency, when it comes to people who are governing to make the decision.
Yeah. But when a public official does have the opportunity for a closed session, they can't do it open as well. They do have the choice. But we haven't had executive sessions for, years in that area. And it's just been administratively quarantined. Anything else? Okay.
Any other questions?
Anyone else?
No? I'm sure you all want to get on with your day. It's a beautiful day out there, I think. Yeah.
Johnson.
Is it an OR regulation that the district attorney is the final word on the agenda? How did that happen? Sorry.
It's okay. I was like, let me tell you what I put on the agenda.
Have happened, and why is that a matter of business? Yes, you are the boarders.
Yeah.
You actually have input to the agenda, but obviously you don't.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that's why we're here, like the gentleman said. But how did that transpire?
Yeah. That's why you see me requesting, let's create a process. Let's create a board authorized process so everybody knows what the rules are, everybody knows who gets the opportunity to do it, and then the board approves it. And quite get there.
Thank you, Casey, for serving.
Well, thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate you taking time to come listen to us, but also ask questions and just be part of the conversation. And if you guys ever have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you over the phone, have you schedule a meeting in my office. Like I said, transparency is really important to me. I think there's a reason, right, that this position is elected and not hired. And that's because, again, I work for all of you. So please feel free to contact me. But other than that, thank you again for coming.
Yeah, well, let's reach out directly.
Yep.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.